Hello, this is Kristina, digital marketing coach. Today is new episode of KSM podcast, Growing Business Online with Kristina. And I have my special guest, Lorrie Brook. And Lorrie, welcome to the KSM podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, and I'm so excited to have you as my special guest speaker today. And I'm in Europe, Serbia. You are so far away from me in Australia. And can you tell us a little bit about you? Introduce yourself, who you are, where you're based, for our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristina. So my name is Lorrie Brook. I'm based in a tiny country town in the middle of central Queensland in Australia. So I like to say I'm in the middle of nowhere. But for me, it doesn't matter because I run my business online and I am known as the relationship architect. I work with couples and families and even individuals who just feel a little bit stuck in their relationships and they want to learn a better way to communicate, to move past that cycle of conflict and create relationships that they feel really fill them up and they're happy. That to me is what this is about.
Oh, that's lovely. As you said, how did you say a relationship architect? Is it correct?
Yep.
And can you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you start your business? What you're doing now? Just
so I've been on
were you in corporate sector or something like that? Because the point of our KSM podcast, Growing Business Online, is to help people to move their business in online space and also to hear such amazing stories for guest speakers who are speakers in this podcast. And your story is going to encourage people an entrepreneur maybe to start business online.
I've had such a windy road. I started off as a family lawyer and in a brick and mortar business. I did a lot of work representing parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles in family law matters. And then also kids as well in those family law matters. And for me, what progressed my business to being online was initially my desire to go, I can see that what we're doing in the family law space over here wasn't really working from a communication perspective. How can I make that easier to reduce the he said, she said arguments? And that led me to start my first online business called Our Children Australia. And that is an online communication platform for separated parents. And then a few years later, I went, well, there's also a growing need for parents to be able to do courses online because I feel, and I continue to feel this way, that it's asking a lot of people who are going through separation, divorce, they've got family law matters, they're before the court, they've had to figure out how to feed the kids, how to put a roof over the kids, go down from a dual income to a single income, or work out how to do all of this stuff by themselves. And then to say, you need time off from work to go to court, you need time off from work to go see a lawyer, and you need time off from work to go and do a course. And I just went, that's so much that we're putting on these people when we can make it easier and they can do it from home. So let's do that. So that then led me to start my second online business called the Separated Parents Orders Training Program. And then around pandemic time, so around COVID, I kind of went, you know what, mediation can be done online too. So just before COVID hit, I went, this is something else that we can do online. We don't need to be sitting in the same room. It alleviates a lot of the safety concerns from a domestic violence perspective because you don't have to be in the same geographical location. You don't have to see each other. You don't have to hear each other, and you can be very separate by distance as well. And so I went, well, that's another reason to do this stuff online. So let's bring that online as well. And then COVID hit and everyone else joined force in terms of bringing their things online. And that's then led me to the relationship architect because COVID also brought with it its challenges in terms of all of a sudden we were living at home 24/7 with our families. And for a lot of us, that was an experience that we've never had to endure before. And we could always have that going off to work to give us our space. And then we had to learn how to coexist all the time, working, doing families, not being able to have any downtime to ourselves because we're in each other's faces all the time. I did it in a 2-bedroom apartment, homeschooling, working, and living with my husband and my daughter for those few months. And so it was really important to me that we found a way to help people through that time in their relationships so that they could not only grow their relationships, but get stronger, but also that they could then figure out how to communicate and resolve the differences, not sweeping them under the carpet and pretending that they didn't exist, but equally not blowing up and finger pointing and blaming the other person for all of the faults. And that's what the relationship reset course is all about, is helping people just find their way in their relationship.
Yeah, and I know, knowing you and met you, what you do, and and this is you're very different from many of my previous guest speakers, because in terms of what you do in relationship part, and you just have such a different experiences with different people, as you said, with kids, with parents, also, as you said, in terms of virus, for me, it was like I work 12 years, in online space, but there are many people, maybe it's some way, there are positive and negative way, but maybe that people have chance to be much more together, for example, on create something new, or approach to have the new perspective to move forward, and yeah, this is really, time changes, and we live in that way. So either that we are in online space, like and when you, as you said, that you in as a lawyer, is that correct?
Yep.
And you and did you work sometime maybe in some corporate, in big corporation, before you started your business? Maybe I didn't.
I did. So I practiced family law, and so I worked for a lot of. I worked for 2 private firms, and then I became a partner of the second firm that I was in. And then I went out and started my own law firm as well. So I had a few different firms that I worked for throughout the time. It was, I have to say, when I went from starting my firm, and then at the same time I started the Our Children Australia business, I was very naive. I kind of went, it's the same as starting a brick and mortar business. I just put it up and people will come. There will be, I didn't really understand at that point the differences in terms of marketing and growing and scaling an online business versus a brick and mortar business. So that has been a journey that's taken me many, many years. I've now been in the online space for close to 10, 11 years, I think it's been. And I love it because I think it's so much easier for our consumers, for people who want to do that work, because we live in such a busy period, I suppose, because we're working, we've got families, we've got all these other things that we want to do, and it's hard to find the time to actually go out and do something for ourselves unless we're sitting on the couch at night watching Netflix.
Yeah, I know. And what did you say? Because that, as you said, when we start something, and we don't know how to market, how to scale, but also sometimes, and the point, in here in KSM podcast, this is the point where listeners will hear stories. Just maybe someone will be encouraged by your story, because every single person has story, is different, and you're just, as I said, really you have just such a specific story, because you're not like as a because it's a very specifically to work in relationship part, especially as family lawyer, and then move forward. And when you are saying that, is it easier for you to work in online space? Because as you said, people should be separate, you don't have to live in the same location, which you mentioned in our conversation.
Is it easier? I think, I don't know if I would say it's easier. I'm just aware more of what I need to do to help people find me and then build that relationship. I don't think marketing online has, how do I say this? Not that it hasn't changed, but I think the fundamentals are still there, right? You still need people to be able to find you. You still need to figure out how you're going to build that relationship with people. And that's probably one of the hardest things in the online space, when you're so used to being able to see somebody face to face and build that relationship instantly that way. You don't necessarily have that luxury online. You know, they're looking at a website and it can be very corporate, it can be very stale, and that they've got to make a decision whether they want to make an appointment with you. Do they like you enough to download something? You know, how does that work? So that's been the hardest part for me to learn. And I still don't think I've mastered it, but I'm getting better.
And as you said, but it's a difference when you met someone in person, B2B meetings, B2C, or whatever maybe, but also in terms of online space, when we are on networking event, we have also opportunity to connect with people, especially when we attend from week to week. And this is organically. So sometimes we don't have to think about that someone is going on a website and download something, because that if that person doesn't know us or our visitor of our website. But for me, from my perspective, what I do is so important to have some page, because people just go and wanted to see who you are, in terms that someone is new, or when you met someone, do follow up. This person, potential client lead just wanted to know much more about you, what you do, your website, just to connect on that way. And I think that it's so important to have a website or some kind of information or some web presentation in online space.
I find it, for me, my website is not only trying to articulate the message of my business, right, but also to show my personality and to give people an idea of who I am and what you'll get when you come and work with me. Because at the end of the day, when we are doing this work, especially for me in relationship space, it's very personal. They're going to share some of their deepest, darkest secrets with you, and they need to be able to know that they trust you, but also that we have that rapport, that we can get on. And if they know my values, if they know how I come across, how I talk, that I'm going to tell them, if they need to pull their head in, if they're looking at it from the wrong way, then that's what I want to get across on my website, because I don't want someone to come to me and then be surprised by that.
And you wanted to just connect and to get deep inside, just to know, to connect with that person who as you said. And there are many people who say, okay, website, but you need to manage that website. I many times I told to people, this is information. Sometimes we don't think, this is the other part from digital marketing, but also you have to have a website, because people wanted to see how are you professional, because of that. And sometimes it doesn't matter that this person see your website, it's immediately is going to be your client. Because sometimes we need to connect, and maybe after 1 year, I had the experience that one lady from USA just came to me after 1 year, So, but the point is to build relationship, to build communication, to know about them, and have your list. And just sometimes people just get back to you and say, okay, I know you, but I want your service. I need your service and what you do, as a relationship architect. So to help me with something.
It's the same for me too, Kristina. Like, people will follow you behind the scenes. Like, I don't have big numbers on social media, but next thing I'll have someone contact me and go, I've been following you on Facebook, or I've been following you on Instagram, and I can see you do this stuff. And you go, well, you're not following me. But people aren't going to physically hit like or hit follow, because then other people get to see what they're doing, and that's not necessarily a space where we want people to know that we're struggling.
Yeah, I know that. And this is the way how, as we do a podcast. So when you start, how people connect with you, how do you mostly connect with your clients, and how do you work with them? As you said, you mentioned courses, you mentioned coaching. like, can you share with us, because this podcast is going to be on many platforms, Apple, Amazon. So there are people who will listen to this podcast in Australia as well. And also,
Yep.
who is fit target? Who is your, in terms, where is your audience? Is it only in Australia, New Zealand, or all around the world?
It's worldwide. And that's one thing I love about my work. So my relationship coaching and courses, that can be done worldwide. The only thing that I'm restricted to in terms of being within Queensland at the moment is mediations. But for me, the communication, the conflict resolution, the building connection in our relationships, that's the same no matter. I do my work primarily online because for me, it's not only, it's easy for people who work with me. They can do it whenever it suits them, which is one thing I love about the internet, is that it doesn't turn off. So if you're lying awake in bed at 2 a.m. and you want something to do, you can jump on and do it, right? What I do though is I do courses, I do one-on-one coaching, and then I do the mediation services. But it all comes back to what type of relationship you have and what is it that you want. Sometimes I will have people come to me and go, I don't know if I want to leave or if I want to stay. This relationship isn't really doing it for me at the moment. Like, I'm feeling really stuck. Is this what life's meant to be like? And so we have to work through that. I always say to people though, to get started, jump on and do my online course, Reset, because that will give you a good indication of not only how I work, but also in terms of a good indication of where your mind is at. And that's most of the time, that's the problem, is we need to get out of our own heads to make a decision. But yeah, online courses, coaching, one-on-one coaching. And I do that through a platform called Be Connected, the one-on-one coaching. And then I also do my mediations both online and also in person.
Oh, that's really nice. So, and I connected also, and I joined Be Connected. So you're inviting me. Yep. Thank you for invitation. So yeah, this is such a lovely platform. I'm still in terms of researching, because when you do many things, sometimes you need only what we need is time, because we are human beings and we just need to have a focus on many things on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, with family, with ordinary daily job, and with networking event and many things around.
Can you believe, like, when we're recording this, it's the end of August almost. The year has just flown by.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sometimes people just think about, oh my God, it was like 8 months ago, it was New Year, but it's going to be very, very quickly. It's going to be Christmas time, and then holiday in January and next year, and so it's very everything is very good. And when you do relationship, what kind of relationship you resolve it, like family, business, when you in terms of conflict, or can you share with us, maybe for our listeners, maybe they will much more to have much more approach to just understand the way, how do you work that, how do you work with clients, and what you do in basically.
Primarily I do personal relationships, so your partner relationships or parent-child relationships, but I have done workplace as well. So for me, relationships are really no different, no matter what the context of those relationships, whether it be partner, colleagues, friends, parents, whoever it is. At the end of the day, what is going on in the relationships generally can come back to a few factors. And so one of the things I always say is, let's look at how you're showing up in those relationships, right? How are you presenting? Are you turning up to a meeting, or are you turning up to your conversation, or coming home at the end of the day and you're always flat, you're always negative, you know it's going to be a fight, you know it's going to be a horrible night, or you know it's going to be bad news when you meet your boss, and that's what you're expecting. And so you're gearing up for that fight, for that conflict, and then that follows. You're expecting it, you're prepared for it, you come in, you're standing tall, you're sharp, you're like, nah, I'm not going to let them get over me today. And so that's what you tend to see. And so then we look at how can we change that? What can we do to change what we're experiencing there? What are we thinking? You know, what are those thoughts that are going on? Like, is it that it's always bad? They hate me. I can't stand going home. It's going to be one fight after the other. I can never do anything right. Why don't my kids ever listen to me? All of that. Yeah, they the thoughts that are going on in our head. And so can we change that as well? Or not necessarily change it, but can we choose to pick a different thought? Because one thing that we often don't realize is that when it comes to our thoughts, they change constantly. But for some reason, every now and again, we kind of grab one, and that's the one that we choose to hold on to. And that's the one that just grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because we're giving more attention to it. And next thing, it's become what we're focusing on. They hate me. They never agree with me. They always think that I'm being the nasty person, all of that stuff. And then the other thing I look at is how we're communicating. How are we actually talking? Are we listening? What are the words that we're using? And how much does our ego, like I've actually nicknamed our ego and pride, right? So I call it Eddie ego and Penny pride. And for me, it's about understanding how much of that is coming out when we're having these conversations and being mindful of when they come up, because all of a sudden you'll feel them come up and you'll feel them come out to protect you. But you need to go, you know what, I've got this. I'm okay. I don't need that. And then we talk about conflict resolution as well. So that's like, for me, it's the communication, it's the connection, it's the conflict resolution all into one that really have an impact on our relationships, how we're experiencing our relationships, but also how we get to make them stronger.
Yeah, that's really nice. And from my previous guest speakers, I have some many coaches, and I work a lot of time in coaching industry and with coaches, different coaches. And also it was one that what I learned from them, thoughts are not our reality. And we have maybe 70 to 75,000 thoughts over the day, and just imagine we need to filter them. We need to manage them, with every single, as you said, in terms that we need to change all those thoughts and how I'm not good, but we need to put that in such a positive way,
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept to sit back and pay attention to all the different thoughts, because I don't know, I might be a weird person compared to everyone else, but my thoughts, I could be thinking about work and next thing I'm thinking about the sky, and then I'm thinking about the washing, or I'm thinking about, what I'm having for dinner tonight, or, oh, I need to get new ink for my pens, or whatever the case. Like, they change so often. And it's really bizarre to stop and pay attention to which ones we then go, oh no, that's a really important thought. And you think, why is that so important? Like, it's when you first come across this and first start paying attention to it, it's so bizarre and it makes no sense. But for some reason, that's the one that our mind at that particular point in time said, no, that's the one I want.
Oh, that's nice. And I know that you run podcast as well.
Yeah,
and can
I
you
do.
tell us a little bit for our listeners who will listen to this podcast, KSM podcast? Can you share with us about your podcast? What is the topic? Who are your guest speakers? And what do you mostly talk with your guests on your podcast?
So my podcast is called Relationship Talks. And I started this podcast because one thing I noticed when I was talking to all of my clients is they had this vision of what a relationship should look like. And quite often it was something that had come out of the movies, and they were chasing that fairy tale. There's something wrong with the relationship because the fireworks aren't there, or the spark isn't there, and it's not to say that there won't be fireworks and there won't be sparks, but I think what I wanted to achieve was to show people that every relationship has their ups and downs. And the important part is being true to you in those relationships and not chasing the fairy tale all the time, And so what I have done is created this podcast where I get people from all over the world. You know, you've been a guest on my podcast. I've had people from the Netherlands and the States and the UK, New Zealand, and they just share their stories on their relationships. And it's, you know, their relationships with their partners, with their children, with their business colleagues, their relationships with food, their relationships with themselves. And what they've learned through their journey, how they've overcome these challenges, how they communicate, how they resolve conflict, what it looks like when they hit a speed bump or a roadblock in their relationship, and how they get around it. Because that's one thing I think is really important, is that we can learn so much from other people's experiences. You know, everyone has a challenge, and yes, our challenges might be a little bit different to, you know, what's happened next door or to somebody else, but those lessons are just as applicable in our relationships, and we can learn what they've done to make things better and how they've changed what they do to build that connection.
And this is amazing, because and thank you so much. I was your guest speaker and we were talking about relationships. So listener will listen this podcast, you know, when you publish it, I will share it, and people will, and listeners would have chance to listen that. But it was amazing talking to you, and I'm super happy, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And I learned a lot, just to be honest, because as you said, when we do interaction and we learn from people, we learn from guest speakers, this is the most important part in our life, in business or in life, to talk to people and hear their voice, hear their story. Because as we said, every single person in this world is unique, has a story, and is different. And this is a point. So and podcasts are so good place for people to be heard. You know, the listeners can hear voice and know about us as entrepreneurs, professionals, teachers, coaches, whoever may be, you know. Just this is really,
yeah.
And there are people who shy, you know. For me, it was like a challenge that I had maybe 5 guest speakers who heard for the first time on some podcasts, and it was amazing, you know. For me, you know, it was such a great experience, to be honest, with them.
It is. And isn't it nice to be able to go, you know, we're not alone? Yeah. That's what I love.
You're not alone. This is so true. Alone. Yeah. And for people who, I always have in my KSM podcast some message for some people who wanted to start business, or who are in stuck, or something that they wanted to build relationships. You do have any message for them to show up to, you know, just to move forward any way that they want, but they may be stuck. They want something, but they don't know how to do it, how they will resolve it.
Yeah. So my first thing for them would be to say is to get out of their own way. And they're going, well, I've tried that and I just don't know how to do it. So to change the context, you know, if you're sitting at your desk and you're trying to do something and it's not coming, get up, go for a walk. If you're outside, change the scenery, do something completely different. Go mow your grass, go do the washing, go out for coffee, go for a movie, do something to not think about it, right? Something to really just switch your mind off from thinking about that, because if that's what you're thinking about, you're only going to go around in circles. And then come back to it with a bit of a clear head and look at it from a different perspective. Don't go back to it from, you know, I've been trying to do it this way, and keep, you know, it's a bit like trying to go through a brick wall with a bit of a chisel. You know, you're not going to get very far very quickly. So how can I approach that wall differently? Can I come to it from a different angle? Can I do something else to help knock it down? Can I get a different tool? So get a coach, reach out for help with somebody if you're stuck in business. If it's relationships, reach out.
If you're stuck in relationship, just go to and connect with Lorrie.
Yeah.
Or because if you wanted to follow your dreams, just try, never give up, and also have a self-talk with yourself, because we have many different thoughts. So just try to, if you cannot move them in a positive way, connect with Lorrie, and she will help you just to resolve it and show you a way how to do it. Maybe just to
it's all
resolve.
about approaching the problem from a different angle. How can you do that differently? So, and use tools that you haven't used before.
That's nice. And Lorrie, how listeners can connect with you? I will put all information, but can you tell us about your website and how listeners could connect with you and reach out to you to help them to resolve their relationship problems? Anyway, whatever may be, any kind of relationship.
So my website is therelationshiparchitect.com.au, and you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. I hang out on Instagram a lot at My Relationship Architect.
Oh, Lorrie, yeah, it's really nice. I asked you many questions, and I really feel amazing with you today. And this podcast is going to be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon, Apple, Radio Public, Google Podcast, FM Player FM, and I'm going to spread the word, and I still work and deliver KSM podcast on many platforms. So I'm super happy having you today. It's such a great pleasure having you as a really specific and very significant guest speaker today.
Thank you so much. I've had so much fun being here too. My cheeks are hurting from smiling so much, Kristina.
Thank you so much. And and I want to also connect to Lorrie, and she has also her podcast, so maybe you will be her guest speaker. Thank you, Lorrie. Regards far away from Serbia, and I see you very soon. Maybe to the end of the year we will get and do and host you again. Thank you so much.
That would be fantastic. Thanks, Kristina.
I would love to. Goodbye.